thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar. This opportunity today that we have to listen to those that are responsible for information security in the companies and what are their views about how artificial intelligence is changing security operations for good and for bad. So thank you very much. Welcome, Petri, George, and Almog for joining us today. So if you could introduce each other now, one by one, that will be great so the audience knows you better.
Will do. So Petri Kuivala, the ex-CISO for Nokia, NXP Semiconductors, and also being exposed with Microsoft, Qualcomm, and few other companies through the mergers and acquisitions. Been actually establishing SOC 2 times, once with Verizon and once with TCS. Not going to go deeper into that one, but during those days we kind of dove deep into the topics of the security operations and what are the challenges. But over to you, Almog.
Thanks, Petri. Thanks, Ignacio. Almog, CEO and founder of TandemTrace. Basically, we're building a new operating system, AI operating system, actually, for security operations worldwide, hopefully to change for good the entire industry. Very excited about it.
Cool. Hi, I'm George Papakyriakopoulos. I'm the CISO for Skroutz, which is the largest marketplace in Greece and the southeast of Europe. I've been in the industry many years, started from an offensive background and being a red teamer and switched to a full CISO role for the last 6 years. So I'm very keen on discussing how we're feeling about SOC today.
And that's the question, right? How are we feeling about the SOC today? Because I think if not every day, every week, there is something new happening about the topic of AI and security operations. And we hear about AI on the attacker side, AI on the defensive side, and there are a lot of different opinions about how to implement AI on security operations. And one of the topics that is resonating a lot is like, should companies build their own solutions? Should engineers be having access to AI themselves to try to implement the AI on their own by coding solutions, or there are more pros and cons to choose, more commercial solutions available today. What is your view of how is the impact today of AI in building processes and implementing new solutions on the security operations side of things?
Yeah, but happy to comment first. That's fine. So, with my history about do you build it yourself or do you rely on the commercial solutions? Been seeing it over the last 30 years when I've been in the different roles with cyber, and usually the first thing is that yes, build absolutely something yourself so that you understand what do you want. It doesn't mean that you need to build the end solution. If you are going to get the end solution from someone and you don't understand what you are trying to get, you are not going to get what you imagine that you are going to get. So that's the first thing. But then the second thing in that line of thought is that if and when people are building the end solutions by themselves, they usually need to have a kind of really damn good competencies and product teams with them, which some of the companies can actually really build, and the largest actually do so in a maintainable manner. But immediately when you get into the companies which are only having like 50,000 people or so, which is already a large company, they usually cannot maintain that sort of competence over the long run. And it means that you may have for a year or two an excellent self-built stuff, but it will die. I have seen so many times in large companies that it dies always. So the main thing is that understand what you want by building, concepting and so on, but most probably I at least vote mostly for acquiring it from someone who has wasted their life of developing the best solution in market.
Yeah, and George, I understand you have, you like to be building things. That's your background. And how have been your experience so far in trying to upgrade security operations, by yourselves, building tools?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Petri a lot. I do like to build things, and obviously when you're an engineer, you understand the ins and outs of things, and you're able to build exactly what you want, right? Which is the good part. so you can validate that your vision makes sense and it can actually deliver what you want, as Petri said. But again, when you actually know how to build things and how things are built is when you understand all the intricacies, right? Because building something, writing the code or designing the product is not the hard part. It's usually the easy part. The hard part that most people don't realize, and now with AI, this is way worse, is that whatever you build, you marry afterwards. So it's one thing to build a solution that works today and works really well. It's another thing to keep that solution highly available with backups, with proper security, with keeping up with all of the industry changes, all of the different APIs that change daily that you need to consume, and maintain the infra that's going to support this thing, keep up with the threats that are coming up and the new attacks, and adapt this tool. It's basically a full-time job. So if you're doing that 2, 3, 4 times for 2, 3, 4 different products within your company, then basically you're no longer a CISO or a security team. You're basically a product manager, right? So again, you need to understand, and maybe for a startup of 10 people, it doesn't make sense to go to a big vendor and spend half their ARR on buying a product, and they can build something quickly in-house. But for a company from a mid-size point of onwards, my motto is usually, if it's not our line of business and it's not something very simple, then go to the people that know how to build it. And maybe your experience of building a POC can help you drive the conversation, understand if the vendor is actually selling you real stuff or something that doesn't work, and even help them shape the product around your needs as well. But I don't think you can manage in the long term in that regard.
Yeah, and it's about that really. What is your priority, right? If building is a priority, is one thing. If building that particular thing is a priority for you. Now, Almog, you have been working very hard now building. I think one tool that is one platform that is really doing an excellent job in bringing AI to security operations in the way that the customers need. And you have got tons of conversations with people like George and Petri and others. Now, what is the experience that you had about explaining why AI should help in the SOC and in which way it should?
I think that first of all, I agree with many of the points. Like for example, with Petri said about first of all, build internally gets questions and answer you can figure out while building, which is super important. Then you can get out and reach out to a vendor, and then you can be more mature about what you really need. So I agree that software is a ever evolving kind of process. It's not like 1 month, 2 months vibe coding. It's years of ongoing process, and it's evolving. It's never kind of finished by any means, especially with this complex deep tech kind of security operation. It's also one of the advantages, for example, that any vendor has is once you work with couple of customers, many different customers, first of all, you have from software point of view, you see many different types of edge cases. So if you're building only for yourself, you not necessarily have all these edge cases to cover. There are other, of course, different aspects like you need to do in your team. You need to have someone, especially with AI, benchmarking all the time, the different types of model to do the calculation around how much it costs you on the LLM side, because it would be a huge spending. So it must be a very efficient. So from a vendor point of view, it's you have the advantages that a single customer doesn't have necessarily. I agree that in many different aspects of, even for secops to build even partial stuff, it's a good idea. I mean, first of all, curiosity and let your people be excited about building stuff internally. But you can do it small task. And then, of course, the operating system can be acquired or purchased by someone else. But I'm a little bit biased, of course, but I think that the entire security operations need to be handled by, a vendor. And then many different aspects, small tasks, obviously you can build internally and you can iterate and let your team help to build internally. That's a good idea for sure.
And you all touch indirectly a couple of topics here and there, because you touch now about the budget and the cost and the responsibilities and the team, right? And those are the things that AI is changing today. AI is changing the predictability of costs if you build by yourself. If you on one side, it's also changing the responsibility of people within the team. And I assume that no CISO wants to have some unlimited budget that is being spent on AI tokens, right? That you don't know what to expect from that. how you balance the decisions here, because at the end of the day, you need to decide, where to invest to improve the security of the company. And when it comes to security operations today, there seems to be too many options and too many unknowns, right? And that's a question for any of you.
Yeah, I can start and then the guys can follow up. I think especially budgeting, as you mentioned, and costs, it's a very complex exercise because in SOC specifically, I think the biggest spend is not even tokens or software or tech. It's actually people's time, so human hours, right? So building a SOC, it basically comes down to how many competent SOC analysts you can find within your market or within Europe. What is the cost per hour that these people need to charge to provide their service, and then how much of that coverage you need as a company. So any hour or any amount of time you save to the analyst is a big spend saving, right? So if a solution can bring the time that's needed for the SOC to operate way down, then you're immediately winning on the budget. So you need to do a very complex cost exercise and see exactly what the operational cost is versus the product cost is, plus the time that you would need to build something in-house, as we discussed before. Then put all of this down into a function and actually decide what makes sense. And from my experience, what I've seen, usually getting a product that works out of the gate and quickly takes the time to triage something from hours to minutes is immediately a budget win, right? Even if the product is expensive, or even if you need to pay upfront licensing costs for a year or two or whatever, you're still winning because people's time is the most expensive asset, especially in security. It's very hard to come by, so it's something you should be efficient about.
Yeah, that's easy to actually build on top of too. I think that the most valuable part of a human being is a brain. And if we occupy our brains collectively to something that the machine can do, we are not very much using our brains. Simple as that. But let's get a bit more kind of technical and number driven. Prior to this conversation, I actually made a bit kind of interview with one of the GTPs, and I asked that. So, what is the average percent of a kind of MITRE attack use cases that companies are capable of actually monitoring today? And the answer was that in average, 22% of the kind of MITRE use cases are covered by the SOCs and CMs and EDRs and whatever you have there. Out of those, when I continued the conversation, the machine said that about 70% of all the alerts that lands to the SOC table are actually false positives. Even then, when you harvest all of those, you get about 60 alerts an hour if you are having a regular 30,000 people company with R&D and operations and so on. Meaning that you would actually need to have about 60 to 70 tier 1 analysts to be able to properly look through all of those. And we are still talking about 21 or 22% of the MITRE attack framework. Think of this from the point of view of the uppers management. You have basically promised to your uppers management that we have proper security operations, which is one of the best in the world, as we all CISOs tell to the uppers management and the board of directors. They don't expect that it's the coverage is 20%. They don't expect that you can cover only 5 to 10% of all the alerts. They expect that you can see pretty much bloody damn everything. And that's something that you can actually also see from all the different articles that is written from the major breaches. Almost all of those alerts, the article says that the SOC already knew about this issue, but they didn't react. And then we all collectively laughed that, oh, how stupid they were. They didn't react when they saw the thing. But it is just mission impossible with these numbers to do this sort of game. And that's why I think that we will die with all the mythologies of this world or whatever is the new attacking methodology if we are not going to be much more smarter and using the machine to help us all.
I think that we also need to think always to run 5 years later and 5 years before. I mean, we take, first of all, the for granted in a way, like 2-3 years after, you know, the ChatGPT in a way, we take for granted this cognitive bandwidth, right? We are now much more free. Like we took, for example, in the last 2 weeks, a customer from 1% of alert detection and coverage to 100%. So we take for granted in a way this option, like we never have this capability with SOAR or any automation. So now we can do it in a very kind of unit economy way. And also, like, imagine like 5 years from today, you know, models would be probably cheaper. It would be more commoditized. It would be less localized. And I think that for the first time, we really have this cognitive bandwidth to do like decision-making, proper decision-making, meaning all the alerts can be triaged, all the alerts can be analyzed. We can do hunting now. We can find more suspicious and hidden activities, and everything in a decent cost that can fit into the budget. Also, the budget, like one example is like you can take now customer from 5 million budget, for example, to 1 million budget on a SOC and the same kind of much better quality, but also from 5 million to 1 million, from 20 million to 4 million. That's a huge kind of budget win for sure with a higher quality. So I think that in a way we kind of in 2026 we take for granted cloud code and all this revolution of the frontier models. It's amazing, to be honest. There are other prices like privacy and data that needs to be discussed, but in terms of cognitive bandwidth and pricing, it's just amazing. I mean, we've never been experiencing anything like that in terms of cognitive bandwidth. It's amazing.
Let me quickly ask, actually, Almog, prior to this call, we already discussed also about the token and token costs. What is your answer to the token cost? Because that is bothering so many of us.
So I think that unlike coding, here it's like you can control the input of the output of the models when you do like the triage or the hunting. So you really can enforce, first of all, the amount of input tokens and output tokens. So it's predicted how much you're going to spend with your token. It's not going to get you bills like AWS or with coding it could, you know, millions of dollars. So we have a control way to predict how much it will cost you. And if you think about, you know, normal day where you have 100, 200, even 1,000 alerts per day, it should cost you like somewhere between $2 to $10 a day to do alert triage for 1,000 alerts. So it's kind of amazing. And then like on the way we do it efficiently, it's like if you have like 1 alert, 5 alert, 10 alerts that are sharing the same context, we're going to treat them as one kind of cluster and then doing a very optimal process of triaging all of them in the same kind of pipeline, which will cost you eventually like 10 cents for this entire analysis. But you need to be like very efficient. I mean, the pipeline is a very specific one. It's also related to the fact like building internally or not. You need to have, you know, data perspective, you need to have AI perspective, you need to have offensive, defensive. So you need to combine all of this perspective in order to have the most efficient pipeline for this alert triage. And that takes time because it's a lot of research. It took us a year to get to this efficient level. And it's very kind of deep and complex pipeline where you need to optimize it in any different way because the difference between 10 cents to $2, it's like a huge one. You can't operate a SOC where every investigation costs you like $2. It just doesn't make any sense from budget point of view.
It doesn't, but at the same time, based on those numbers that I just actually discussed, let's just say 30,000 people generating approximately $1,500 a day, you would be saying that from the token cost point of view, it would mean about 150 euros a day. That is a kind of phenomenally cheap considering that what it requires from a human being and human capacity. So even if the machine that you are building would not be the perfect yet, which is of course getting more and more better, I would at least as a CISO immediately want to test this sort of shit and see that is it delivering really the value that you are promising. Of course, I don't believe into you, but we'll see.
But this is part. This is one of the challenges today, right? I know it's like, you know, are you able to measure and show the value of AI in general, and then compare it to the costs, right? And I assume that this is something that CISOs are facing, today. Like okay, where I put AI in a way that is efficient and gives me value, and where I don't put it because maybe it doesn't. Like when we talk about how to get a mature SOC in place. Clearly, we see that there are areas where AI brings a lot of value. The triage that you were just describing, it brings down the cost, it frees up the analyst times. Now, threat hunting, many security operation centers, they don't even have threat hunting or they outsource it. No, how are you seeing this? I know George or Petri, about a mature SOC needs today, will need today AI, in these areas. Is this a must where everybody should go? How do you feel about this, and how would you describe a mature SOC to today, like in a few words?
I would say that when AI came up, right, most CISOs were very skeptical because it introduced a nightmare of issues that we need to deal with, data loss, privacy issues, etc., etc. The one thing that we were never concerned, we immediately, had a sigh of relief, was actually a shock, because we immediately understood, okay, finally, I'm not gonna spend and waste my time going through the same fucking false positive alert for the 30th time today that I know is a false positive, but I still need to do the proper triage because it might be 1 in a million case that this is actually something true. So we finally realized that, there is a way to save this time and move it elsewhere to more impactful operations. And the common argument with AI in everything, and that is including SOC, is AI hallucinates a lot. You're not sure about the accuracy. It's not as accurate as a human, etc., etc. But especially on the SOC, I would argue it's the opposite, right? There was never any guarantee that analysts have the time and the clarity, and they are not fatigued enough that they will actually go through every alert and look at every edge case and every data point and make sure that whatever they're investigating in full. So humans were also very, very faulty and lossy when they're doing SOC analysis, because it's, again, alert fatigue, a lot of alerts per day, seeing the same things. So you tend to fall into patterns and assume that things are the same as last day. So in that regard, I don't think you're missing anything on the accuracy when you're using AI agents. On the contrary, an AI agent at least doesn't get tired, right? Or there's no alert fatigue. They will be as eager doing it the millionth time as they were the first time, because they don't care about that. So they would be able to cover more of the data points more efficiently, keeping the same level of quality, whether it's the morning or in the middle of the night, etc., etc. So I think SOC is something that's clearly winning by having AI on board, and I would consider that in the next 4 or 5 years, I don't see any SOC being able to operate without an AI capability. Whether that's totally managed by an agent or semi-managed with human in the loop, or both, or only low alerts get triaged by an agent and the high alerts get a human interaction. That depends on the risk profile and the appetite of each company. But I don't see any SOC being able to catch up in the AI era without using an AI agent, because you need to be able to do triage very quickly, very efficiently, and without leaving any data points out of the analysis. So especially on a threat hunting exercise. And circling back to how you prove the value, and that's my last point. So the easiest way for a company that does AI SOC to prove value is actually plug it into an existing CM system, doing a threat hunting exercise and finding a couple of, not necessarily a breach, because you might not have a breach, but 2-3 interesting activities that the SOC never picked up and missed. This is immediately a win, because you didn't have that visibility before, and suddenly you see 3 new things in your environment that might be benign, but you didn't know about them. So that's immediately a very easy way to prove value. So I think that's the way forward for any company that's selling AI SOC or creating products around that. It's very easy for you to prove value by just letting people do a very quick POC on that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, George, actually, about the proof of value and then using the threat hunting as a vehicle of analyzing that how good or bad decisions the people in the SOC has in the past made. And for an obvious reason why they are making those decisions, they are just getting tired and so on. Maybe commenting to that, I've been working 30 years with this industry and seeing lots of engineering mindset, which is excellent because it wants to think and make things constantly better and better and better. The negative side of that, on my opinion, is that the engineering mindset also easily sees that if it's not perfect, then it cannot be used. And I would like to really encourage people of getting over that. Thinking from the medical doctor's point of view, the doctors are today using AI for looking into the cancer and tumors from the pictures, because those AI solutions are much more accurate of finding them. It doesn't mean that they are exactly 100% yet, but they are more accurate because of the exact reasons that George just mentioned. I think that it totally analogically applies to the SOC as well. You need to get those AI classes in front of you. When the AI makes mistake, help it to learn what it mistake, where it made a mistake and why it made the mistake, and make it better so that next time it's not going to be kind of making the same one again. And the last point, if it's making mistakes, it is a bit like a human being, i.e. you need to start slow. You are basically onboarding a new employee. This time it's just an agentic employee, and then you first need to stay close to that employee. You need to understand and help that to understand your environment. You need to validate that it's doing its work better. But the more you gain the trust that it's delivering you the goods that you want it to deliver, the more autonomy you give it to it. So it's totally analogical of bringing the agents to bringing new junior employees as well.
I think that also like people make the assumptions today, like based on old models. Like I remember like the author of Cloud Code, for example, he said that Cloud Code didn't work before they get to a certain frontier model level, like until Sonnet Opus 4.5, the Cloud Code almost cannot be used because the frontier model wasn't good enough. And I feel like in many cases where, you know, people in SOC tested some solution like 2 years ago and they had like different types of LLM models, the results were not like excellent or amazing. But the progress, you know, we see this race with the frontier models that are getting like dramatically better. And now everyone, you know, we used to talk about AI slope. Now I would say that it's more like human slope. I would never allow to any of my developers to do development using without coding agents. I mean, just the amount of edge cases you will never be able to think about during the day, all the time. So I think that only because of that reason, I mean, both for SOC and for coding, it's not reasonable to do it with humans only. So these assumptions are like a little bit old-fashioned, and the models would be better, the solution would be better. I think at some point it would be even easier to plug and play to any different environment. I mean, practically speaking, thinking about, you know, a mainstream SOC, you have identity solution, you have endpoint, you have SIEM solution. Even if you have like 3-4 systems in place and you need to, for every different alerts, you need to check all of them just to figure out false positive, true positive, what's the risk level. Practically speaking, it's unmanageable. You can't do it. With AI, with, you know, friction of cost and speed, you do all of that immediately. All of these 4 sources, 5 sources. We have like customers with 10 sources. You get it from Netscope, from Proofpoint, from the endpoint, from the SIEM, from the XDR. All of it, you connect it to a coherent kind of picture. It's just unmanageable and uncomparable to humans' job. So I think that it's a little bit like trust, you know, cloud early days, but it will be like more mainstream in the next few years for sure. As George said, by 2030, I think that no SOC would be operated without AI operating system for sure.
So and that topic that you mentioned about the sources is relevant because, you know, when I had a chance to talk with several people in security operations, you know, there are not two SOCs alike because, you know, a lot of them, to be able to play with the output that their team can produce, they play with the input of the sources. You know, like a large SOC that that I talked with the other day. You know, only 25 to 30% of their endpoint data was actually going to the SIEM because they couldn't manage the output. Otherwise, they were handling it differently. And I think I know what you guys are saying is like, by implementing AI, you can unlock more the data that you have. You know, you can really start to direct more data, increment the number of logs and sources that you can use to have a really full visibility. That today, almost no SOC has really full visibility because the inputs are being manipulated to not create even a bigger overload at the end of the day, right? What is your view and experience on this?
Yeah, I would say that this is actually how AI reshaped the security vendor landscape, right? Up until the advent of ChatGPT and the LLM agents, basically the holy grail of security vendors was, and what CISOs were asking, was a single pane of glass, right? We always were looking for consolidators, integrators that would offer you one solution that within that one solution, dashboard, whatever, you can view your EDR, your CM, your DLP, your all of your solutions. And then the unique selling point of the vendors was how many integrations do they support? Do they support all of the APIs to pull the data? You know, you would always go to the bigger player just because they have more integrations and they can bring all the data in one point of view. You don't care about that anymore because your single pane of glass is basically your AI agents. And the AI agents can integrate with almost any system. You just point them to an API or a CLI tool or even a browser if they can, you know, take over your browser. And you don't even care about integrations anymore. Your single pane of glass can be the agent. As long as your data is structured enough, that's the only thing you need to make sure today, that you have structured proper data. Even if it's split between 20 systems, it doesn't matter, as long as you know the structure of it. Then you can just, you know, explain to the agent, this is the structure for each system. This is the tools you can use to go and fetch the data. Go and do the correlation for me. And you no longer care about integrations and putting everything together and maintaining a single store of data. You can even start tapping into log sources that you wouldn't consider from a security standpoint because it's too hard to integrate. Nowadays, it's much easier. You can go into business logs as well, or operational logs, or, you know, error logging that your product teams are building, and you can even leverage that when you're doing triage, because now it's very easy. Just point the agent to one more source or one MCP server or one API away and bring that data into the picture as well. So yeah, as long as your data is curated enough and in a clean enough state that you can use, I think that basically the whole thing shifted the market completely.
Yeah, and maybe taking one step kind of prior to that one, the old model of actually adjusting that, what is your SOC doing? I said 21% of the MITRE use cases led to 1,500 kind of alerts, 70 analysts needed for that. Obviously, I didn't have money for 70 analysts, so I had only 7 analysts, meaning that I want to have only 2.1% intake of the stuff. So the old way of optimizing this shit, so to say, is to just look at how much money do you have, what can you afford, and then you do your best in looking into the threat intel and looking into the strategy, that where should you invest that kind of 2.1% of money that you can actually have available for yourself, which leaves huge amount of open space for the attackers to kind of look into where you don't see. You just don't have the money and capacity of doing so. What George was actually talking about is extremely important. One day, this is I think the 2030 kind of dream, where we can cover the whole 100% of MITRE with the help of the AI agents, but it will require exactly what George actually said, an excellent data intake, a kind of really well-made data model that can feed directly into the AI agents so that they can actually do their work properly. And I think that that's not necessarily something that the companies have been doing extremely well. So this links back to the question about, should I build it myself or should I kind of outsource it and purchase a tool? My simple conclusion would be that you, as an internal team for a company, you must make sure that the AI models have extremely damn good data, because no product can ever resolve that problem. If you are feeding garbage into the AI system, it will be delivering you garbage out. And you must actually assign your engineering power of making sure that the data is correct. Then the products can actually do their work well.
I think that the cost might be, I mean, it's open question. I still don't have complete answer about it, but some of the open questions we have is like, AI agents really like raw data. In some cases, it's really good also with unstructured data. So it's not like all days when you need to have like the exact data pattern and data models when you use automation like SOAR. So it could live with unstructured data pretty well, but then there is a question, you know, we were introduced over the last few years, you know, solution like Cribble and Unum, where you reduce the amount of data getting into your SIEM and other system. But the reality is that AI agents loves raw data because it takes fragment of data from many different sources. If you remove some of this data, then you are missing data. So I think that some of the budget concern would be AI agents need more data. More data mean more telemetry, more, you know, server-side kind of cold storage, hot storage, stuff like that. Maybe some of the costs would be, you know, transitioned into this raw data buckets, whether it's SIEM, XDR, and other kind of options. But the AI agents need raw data. Raw data cost because you need to store them somehow. And it's still open question, like how can we optimize that? Because the visibility, as long as you have more visibility, whether it's application, security, operating system, infrastructure, all of that, AI can use that for any of this context, but it costs a lot in terms of storing it. So this is an open question. I'm not sure anyone has the solution today, but it's a big one.
I would argue, Almog, that maybe even the CM will not be the primary product in the future. Maybe the budget can be allocated away from the CM and towards that. I would expect that as the agents become more mature and most of the triage is actually happening from an agent, you would shift more into a security data lake model rather than a traditional CM, because most of the CMs are built for humans to operate, and they're offering human-centric UIs and human-centric automations because people needed to do that before the advent of AI. But nowadays, I don't even feel the value is justified on buying a batteries included CM that has all of these features. What you basically need is a database, because the database enforces a very good data schema, as Petri said before, and it basically forces you to properly curate your raw data in a format that makes sense for the agent. And it also reduces your data storage requirements as well, because you structure the data in a way that it takes less space, right? And I think these problems are solved on the product side, in a sense that no matter how many security logs you consume, I don't expect these logs to be more in size than what a production database of a very well-known service is already consuming. If you take, I don't know, a social network or Google or whatever, they are already ingesting way more data than a security team can produce. So I think there are already solutions and cost optimizations there on a typical database that you can reuse for storing your security data as well, because a security lake is just a database. It's not a different thing. It's not something different, just a database of storing data, basically. So I think that will solve itself eventually, and we will just fall back into existing patterns that work elsewhere.
Yeah. Nothing to add on top of that. Excellent points, George.
Is there any other final point that you want to add? So we can shift it quickly there, and then we close it up.
It's maybe to speak about mythos and the potential of the offensive part, if it's even optional or mandatory anymore, because there are mythos and there are other models that are going to break in very easily and fast. We see it with many Fortinet kind of products and others. What's the future in terms of defensive versus offensive? If now the offensive is using AI, do we even have an option? Is it mandatory or optional?
Yeah, that's excellent to open. George, you want to actually go first? I have ideas, but George, anything?
Sure. So yeah, I do think that obviously the first people that actually got to see the impact of AI in security were the offensive people, because it was much easier to plug and play. And the good thing with offensive side of things is you don't need to be accurate and exact. You don't need to be right every time, right? You only need to be right once. For your objective or twice. So they immediately saw the benefits, and this is the whole premise and the whole fear mongering of attackers are using AI, so they're speeding up way more than before, and defenders haven't caught up yet, etc., etc. But that was, in my mind, that was always true. I think attackers were always faster than defenders. If that wasn't the case, we would have way less incidents than we had before, because attackers are not constrained by anything. The only thing they're constrained by is time and money, while defenders are always constrained by many other things as well, right? The risk appetite of the board, the priority that security takes, the available budget, the people that they can find in the market, the tools they have available, the time it takes to deploy these tools and manage them and configure them properly, etc., etc. So I don't think that the AI shifted that much towards the offensive side. It was already shifted towards there. I think the difference now is that the new bottleneck would essentially become the remediation of things, because agents are really good, both for attackers and defenders, at discovering things. You saw the whole thing with Mythos and Mozilla discovering 250 vulnerabilities in a month, and then Mozilla had to do a 2-month sprint, not building any products, just focusing on remediating things. So I think the next big thing is actually remediation, which I don't think is solved yet by AI, because it needs a lot of business context in tandem with the code context to be able to remediate things without breaking your business flows. So people will eventually start getting flooded with security reports and findings by their own tools or tools that people are using externally or bug bounties, etc. But the problem is how the teams adapt into remediating the issues before they become an incident, right? And this moves a little bit away from the SOC discussion and goes into the broader security discussion. But we also need to find ways to automate remediation or making the SOAR platform also agentic capable, so they can quickly respond to findings, gaps, alerts, incidents on the fly, so that security teams have enough time to then go back and review the applications of the code and figure out a way to properly fix the gaps and the issues. I think that would be the next battlefield for security, and it's not yet solved, at least from my experience.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Let me though take a bit different view as well. 30 years in the industry, I think that it has always been the whack them all, whack them all, whack them all. It's the only thing that has changed is the speed. Even if George says that has not changed that much, I think that the speed actually has dramatically changed over the last few years. I just actually looked into the Cloud Security Alliance's paper, which says that the time to exploit new vulnerabilities 2018 was more than 2 years. Now it's 20 hours. Last year, that time to exploit was 23 days. So it has become 25 times faster during 1 year. So that leads us to exactly where George said, how the hell do we actually remediate quickly? That's going to be the big thing. And there is multiple answers to that topic for sure. And let's not today dive deep into all of those, but one word maybe, whatever is in your front line, it needs to be immutable. It needs to be something that you can replace it in a very quick kind of turns. I've been discussing with one large bank in the US and they CISO. They are currently actually having 1 hour rotations where they are every hour actually checking if there's anything new, and they are capable of spanning the new fixed systems in hourly basis with the kind of most critical systems. Most of the companies obviously cannot do that. The last point is actually related to the operations. The cycle will speed up and speed up and speed up until we are very close to the zero. Then it starts to be more of the game where it kind of the exploitation becomes wider at the same time that it becomes kind of fast. And then it comes to the question that for those companies who cannot remediate yet in hourly basis or minute basis or whatever it's going to be tomorrow, they need to have capabilities from AI that is capable of reacting and analyzing and saying to that, hey, now it seems to be a leak over there, let's fix that one in a prioritized manner. So I don't think that any of these technologies will be kind of disappearing here. Yeah, maybe some of the CMs and so on, as George correctly said, will be kind of disappearing. Some new versions will be taking over, but the same kind of a loop in a speedier manner will just happen in the future.
I think that also like cybersecurity holy grail in a way that it was always like prevention, but in our world it's never like possible. So you ended up eventually with detection. Now you can do better detection in order to do eventually a response or any kind of remediation. So I think that detecting is obviously the only plan at this point. Like if it's easy to break in, if it's easy to exploit, if it's easy to break any kind of element, then I mean you need to detect it as soon as possible so you can respond very fast before it's like too late. So I think that we have this advantage. I mean, first of all, from prevention point of view, I think that from a vendor point of view, we kind of change completely the SSDLC process in our case. So every kind of iteration, any PR code, any kind of feature is immediately launching AI agents against it from security point of view. So we have like better kind of security process in place to make sure the application is much more secure. This is a big advantage for any security team. But then on the SOC side, you definitely need to have like better detection, because prevention, 100% prevention is not possible. I wish it was possible by any technology, but it's not possible. And then the only choice left is like, how can we increase detection? And having this assumption of mythos and other models, you need to have like the quickest detection you can do it, and that is not possible by any kind of existing system which is not AI driven. So only kind of mythos can detect mythos in a way. I think this is the only option available for us. But I see like more optimistic, of course, than like for the first time we have resources. I mean, we've never been having enough resources, and with the AI agents, with the friction of cost, we have resources. So I think that the future is more optimistic than pessimistic for sure.
Well, I think let's finish on that note of optimism about like the abilities, tools, and possibilities that AI is bringing to security and the security operations centers in particular. That clearly is about like the speed of detection and the ability to get the right information on time to respond, right? So Petri, George, Almog, thank you very much for joining today. To everyone that has been listening, thank you very much. Now, if you have any question, please share it in the chat, and then after all of this, we're gonna be answering them. So thank you very much, and I hope we do it again. We're gonna probably have a lot more topics to share in the and discuss from TandemTrace to with everyone else. So thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good day.